All right, everybody. Welcome back to Hey Docs. Kimberly, I am so excited to have you on the show. This has been a topic I have been waiting to talk about, and I cannot wait to unpack this with you.
Yes, me too. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, what I would love, if you wouldn't mind, is if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into what you're doing. Some people may or may not know that your husband is in the ortho world, so you can unpack that too for us. And I know you're also a partner in the practice. So, you want to just talk a little bit about that, and then we are going to jump right into the Enneagram.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited. Enneagram's like my favorite topic. So I'm always happy to talk about it. I'm Kimberly Collins and I'm originally from Montana, live here in Rochester, Minnesota with my husband Grant and our three kids, Caden, Grayson, and Lenny. They're 10, 7, and 4. Grant and I started our practice about 10 years ago, Collins Orthodontics. And at the time when we started, I did pretty much everything that didn't require a DDS. So payroll,
Yes.
taxes, HR, all that good stuff. Now I have an amazing team and I get to really just focus on being the CFO as well as doing the playlist, little things like that.
Hmm.
Outside the industry, so I am an Enneagram coach and an MBTI practitioner. I'm also a musician and an author. I've written a book on the Enneagram that's coming out this year. Yeah, finally. So I'm going to work at both ones. These things just take so long.
Yes.
And then I am also a mom. So between the hours of 3 and 8, I'm a glorified Uber driver for the activities all over town.
You're a momber.
Guys, I'm a bomber. That's the official term now. Oh my God. It's intense.
Oh,
Keeping
that
them organized is its own thing for sure.
yes. Oh, that's great. Tell us a little bit about how you got into Enneagram and what it takes to be certified in that. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of different personality tests out there, and
Mhm.
they all have their own uniqueness to them. So I'm curious what
Definitely.
led you down this path and maybe even how you are with your coaching, how you're helping people with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up just loving personality typing systems. I think the first
Mhm.
thing that I got introduced to was MBTI. So that's the Myers Briggs
Yep.
indicator. Like me as and our family, we were just really into it. My dad managed people and saw this amazing tool as something that you can bring a lot of understanding to team members and really work out harmony and preferences if you know a little bit more about them. So grew up just loving things like that. As far as the Enneagram, I think I came about it maybe 5-ish years ago. And I just thought, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to not only dive into what we do and what our behaviors are, but why we do it. Why did I do
Mhm.
that? Why do I react like that in those scenarios? And just saw this as an amazing opportunity to really increase more understanding in relationships, more harmony in relationships, and team members as well. So in our orthodontic office, being able to create more harmony, efficiency, and just goodwill in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely an area I want to explore a little bit today is we I would say most existing practices at some point or multiple points throughout their career, most doctors have done some type of personality testing or whatnot
Right.
with employees. And I'm curious if we can just really dive into that and talk about. And today's episode is going to be about Enneagram, but how we can use that in our orthodontic practices, but also just in our personal lives and what this looks like from a leadership standpoint because I think so many times when I'm working with doctors, they're always looking at I need to be able to figure out my team. It's a one directional look
Yes.
instead of being like, hey, if I understand myself and
Right.
who I am and what I bring to the table in the long run, it's good to know about my team, but look in the mirror first.
Oh,
So
absolutely. The man in the mirror, right? MJ.
Exactly, exactly. So would you mind talking about that a little bit and what
Absolutely.
in regard to the Enneagram and a doctor as a leader, but then also how we use that in correlation with our teams?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Enneagram is an amazing tool. Like you said, there's so many great ones out there. Where do you start?
Mhm.
And I am an Enneagram practitioner and I am an MBTI practitioner as well. So I can see the benefits of both of these. But what I love about the Enneagram is that it's a typology system based on the idea that we have 9 valid perspectives of the world. They're all
Mhm.
valid, they're different. And each of those perspectives are based on a motivation. So we have a core fear in that motivation, something we're actively avoiding, a core desire, something we're actively striving for, a core longing, something we hope that core desire is going to fill in us, and then a core weakness, like a character flaw that kind of comes out to prevent us from getting what
Mhm.
we want based on all those interactions of those core motivations. So basically, the Enneagram talks about the why behind the what. So a lot of typology systems out there, they talk about the what, the behavior, what people prefer, how they go about their day, what they would choose in their decision making. And Enneagram goes, and you did that because of it. And it
Mhm.
just creates a little bit more understanding. For me personally, it's a little bit less of that memorizing what a behavioral trait would be and more about understanding. If you understand why somebody does something, you can understand a lot about what they're going to
Sure.
do.
Sure.
So, as far as taking that to the team, it's an amazing thing to bring to the team. And I'll talk about leaders for sure, because I agree. I think that's where it actually starts, but we'll talk about the team first. So, the team, what's amazing about it is the first thing it does, it takes our blinders off. We
Mhm.
can't assume that our perspective corners the market on
Mhm.
true perspective of this situation. So, everybody's coming to the table with a little bit different lens on the situation, and all of them are equally valid. So if we can come to the table seeing that, it can improve our understanding of the individuals around us and the wonderful strengths that they bring to the table. Yes, some of their weaknesses as well, but just helps us have a little bit more understanding. It helps us with our communication with our teams. If we
Yes.
understand that people come to the table with uh, different skill sets, but also different tendencies, we can understand people are going to
Mm.
want bullet points. Do not give me the details. And some people are going to be offended by that. So if we can understand that communication, it can really help our teams, even just during the
Mhm.
workday.
Mhm.
Um, it also can help us with what we call triggers. So, a trigger is any kind of experience, conversation, interaction that rubs up against somebody's core fear. And anytime that happens, that person is going to become activated and start to try to do whatever they need to do to try to avoid that core fear. And
Mm.
so, if we understand what our team members are actively avoiding, we can come into feedback sessions, working on projects, maybe working on potential conflicts, not true conflicts, then we can try to avoid those triggers and eventually,
Yes.
hopefully, have better harmonious communication. And then,
Sure.
of course, it helps with just conflict in general. So when we inevitably get into those situations where there's two opinions on a situation and they're conflicting, we can be able to dive into what those two perspectives are of a situation and separate out the stories and the facts and get down to what needs to be resolved faster. The conflict piece is a huge part with the Enneagram because it all comes from that understanding.
Mhm. And I can't help but think if you were a practice, and I think this, definitely probably applies a little bit more to our practices that have more than one team member. I think it's good to have one team
Right.
member and have an understanding, but especially as you're growing in your practice and really understanding your team members, I can't help but think that as a doctor or a business owner, if you were really leaning into getting to know, I love what you said, the why behind why your employees are acting the way they are or the way why they're doing certain things in the office. I can't help but think if you were to invest into really understanding this in the long term, that really I would think has got to also pay off just in longevity of team members. Because it's like a long time marriage. You get settled in and you understand each other, and it sure makes that relationship easier once you're going through that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit before we really pull the Enneagram apart. I'm curious because I think a lot of docs will say to me, "Hey, Jill, do you think I should do some type of a personality test before I hire?" And
Mm,
every once in a while, I feel like maybe we're putting the cart before the horse here. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on teaching, on being a coach in both arenas, but what your thought is on that and how doctors should dive into, or business owners dive into using these personality profiles, either whether it's from hiring to on themselves to existing. Because I don't think it's just an easy answer. And I think there's a
No,
lot of
no.
depth to.
Yes. Yes. And actually, I think you bring up a really good issue that comes into that hiring piece because there's a lot of really great resources out there. And I think that they all work at different parts of that hiring phase and also integrating into the team phase. Um, just like most typology systems, except for the Colby, it's actually illegal to use anything but the
Yes.
Colby in the hiring system. So it's really important that when we're talking about the Enneagram or MBTI, we're talking about these are established team members that you are
Mhm.
looking at. But the Colby is a great if you're looking for the hiring process. That Colby, a person's MO, that is legal to be able to be used in the hiring process. Where I feel like the Enneagram in particular thrives is taking your star employees and showing them ways that they can really shine. And
Mhm.
that's from that individual like growth as a person. So either through emotional intelligence skills or interpersonal skills, whatever they're going to get from being able to understand themselves better. Or you're taking those people that you're like, man, I just know they've got more to give. Or I see them struggling. And I just know that they're a really great employee and I'm going to give them some tools again to just thrive here. That's where the Enneagram's really going to shine. I will say it's a deep dive. So it requires a lot of self observation, a lot of buy in from the employee as well, and a desire to dive deep into some parts of ourselves that it can be a little uncomfortable and maybe bring up feelings that we didn't really want to feel. I would say with the Enneagram, people need to go into it eyes wide open, understanding
Mhm.
that we're going to be looking at things that might make you feel uncomfortable. So if a team member is not really on board with that, what I feel like is a great stepping stone is the MBTI because it talks about preferences, how you enjoy, would you choose this or this? That's a great way of kind of stair stepping your way into the deep dive of the Enneagram.
Sure. And I would also think that I cannot agree with you more in what you're saying, that this is, in my opinion, from what I've seen, this is such a deep dive when you get
Yes.
into the Enneagram that this is not one of those where it's like, hey, we're doing a team meeting
Yeah.
and we're just going to
Hurry.
quickly, yeah, we're
Yeah.
just going to quickly take this test and then we're all going to share and oh, laugh about it. Let's just talk about what even testing looks like and what type of reports we're going to get back. And do you mind diving
Yeah.
into that a little bit? Because again, I think a lot of times doctors, business owners use this as a tool. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
just like the team building tool.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like I'm not quite sure that this is the type testing that you want to be doing for the team building.
Yeah. And everybody gets a half hour to talk about their free online testing. Yeah. And I will say that's probably I feel like that's probably the biggest drawback about the Enneagram in the workplace is it requires a lot of workplace safety where people can
Mhm.
be themselves around each other and have things about themselves exposed, not in a bad way, but deep fears coming out, and that being a place that the team would wrap their arms around you and not use it as ammo to
Mhm.
make it
Mhm.
a negative place. So I would say that the other part of the Enneagram that's a little bit of a drawback is that the testing is really tricky. For a lot of these typology systems, we're talking about behaviors, which are super easy to test. You get to choose when you're looking at a test between one behavior and the other. And the Enneagram says, no, I need you to go deeper. Why did you do it? Which is really
Mhm.
hard to test. So there's a number of tests that are out there that are doing their best and they're doing a great job. But you should whenever you're taking an Enneagram test, take it a little bit with a grain of salt. When you're getting those results back, say to yourself, even the really expensive, great ones like IEQ 9, which is a fantastic
Yep.
resource, or even some of these more pro resources, that they probably are only going to be between 70 and 85% correct. And that it's going to require you, the person taking the test, to sit down and probably read through every single type and decide from this was my test score. This is what I've gotten from reading all the rest of those. And this is my self observation. This is really why I go about the day doing the things that I do, interacting the ways that I have. And it takes a little bit of time as well. So that's the other
Mhm.
drawback. It takes some self observation, a little bit of self discovery and buy in, and then being able to really dive in and take the time to do it, which
Yeah.
it's not going to be that half-hour party game, even though I feel like the online tests are super fun. It's just when you get the results back, you just go, that could be correct. Let's read all of them and see if those
Mhm.
motivations fit.
Yeah, sure. So let's dive into using this as a leader. Using
Yes.
this because, again, I can't help but think, and having done this, I did this for myself personally as
Hmm.
a business owner. I wanted to know what kind of like what you said. I wanted to know
Yeah.
why are my triggers and why do I feel like I have strengths in one area and not in another. And I'll tell you, after getting back my 44, 52 page report back,
Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa, this is a lot," and I'm not even
Yes.
quite sure what to do with all of this, and as I was reading
Absolutely.
through, it's almost like I felt like I had to go on, and am still on because, to be really honest, it just felt so overwhelming that it was something I would
Yes.
pick up and put down and pick up and put back down again. Even to the point of maybe it pointing out some things that I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I really wanna
Yes.
unpack
Yes.
that." Like, that just automatically makes a little
Yes.
hair on the back of my neck be
Yes.
like, "Do I like that about myself? Is that really a component of my personality that I don't see that maybe others do?"
Right.
So
Right.
would you mind talking about that? And this is probably getting pretty real for
Yeah.
any docs out
Absolutely.
there or business owners, but again, I feel like this is that we owe it to ourselves and our teams to do the hard work on us first because going
Absolutely.
back to I think it's so easy to point out everybody else's flaws and never have a really good understanding of ourselves.
Absolutely. And that is the thing about the Enneagram. It's talking about our shadow side, those sides of ourselves that we don't really want to know about. And maybe
Mhm.
we don't really want to know other people know about. And so
Mhm.
I feel like that's a very normal thing to feel pretty intensely overwhelmed by the whole system. And it's a true sign of finding your type when you get that cringe factor where you're like, oh, could I be any of the other types? Are those open? It's a good sign because you probably found your type, but I get it. It's overwhelming. And probably the best way to take those big reports or even those descriptions is to use it as an opportunity for self observations. What's amazing about the Enneagram is it's giving language to an inner experience that can be sometimes very confusing. Sometimes we can go about and have these emotions come out of nowhere, but we're busy. We got to move on.
Mhm.
And so we just
Yes.
push it aside. So the Enneagram gives us language to be able to talk about things that can be confusing for ourselves. So that's the first thing is when you get that type and you feel, yeah, I feel like this is my type, you're able to then open your eyes to the ways that you're seeing yourself doing the things based on that motivation. Yes, you're right. I'm doing that because I want this. And that first is that self observation, taking all that information that Enneagram goes, it's trying to give you an understanding of where that came from. We,
Mm.
as little people, created these social masks and these adaptive strategies for a reason. We were
Mhm.
trying to get ourselves from breakfast to dinner with the environment we were in, the pressures we had. So these things that we do, even if we don't like them, we created them for a reason. So sometimes the Enneagram can be very overwhelming with the amount of information that is there. And I see that as just the types of learners. Here's all the information you could know about this. Now
Mhm.
you can understand why you do this. I also think it gives us an opportunity for a lot of self forgiveness. So it is hard. It's hard to look at those shadows and say, I don't act how I want to. And
Mhm.
I don't show up how I think I am. And it scares me. But being able to forgive ourselves and saying, I was doing the best I could. I developed this as a low person and everybody else is doing the best they can too. Was that Maya Angelou quote? Forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it.
Right,
And it's
right.
that's where I think the Enneagram gives you an ability to say, "Hey, I was just doing the best I could."
Mhm.
And then when you're able to compassionately look at where you are and what you're doing and how it's just pervasive in your life. It's every interaction you have, it's every perception you have. Then you can change. You can give
Mhm.
yourself the space between the stimuli, that interaction that just gets under your skin, and your response. You can say, okay, I'm going to give myself just a teeny bit of space and I'm going to choose to respond instead of react. And that's where I
Mm.
really feel like the Enneagram as a leader, you couldn't do anything better as a leader than to work on yourself. If we as teams are a collection of individuals, we are only as strong as our weakest link. And so, as you
Mhm.
as a leader, if you can look and understand, how you show up in the world and be compassionately choosing better responses, you benefit your whole team by being more responsive and less reactive and more compassionate for yourself. You can give that to other people as well. So
Mhm.
there's really nothing better you can do as a leader
Sure.
to
Oh,
benefit the team than work on yourself.
yeah, I so completely agree with you. And I work with a lot of startup doctors and doctors that are just getting into their practices. And I think sometimes we can get so focused on the steps of doing business.
Yeah.
Did I
Yes.
get my name? Did I get my right location? Have I talked to the doctors? Am I building my practice? And we are so focused on the business of doing business that I think a lot of times docs can lose sight of your personal growth has to be coming alongside your business growth. And
Yes.
where I tend to see, because I work with a lot of existing doctors too, is there starts to become this really vast chasm of our practice is really going, but the doctor is
Yeah.
fading away
Absolutely.
and that leadership role is being strained and then the team members are being strained and then we've got lots of turnover and
Yeah.
so it's like and
Absolutely.
one way you've got this really amazing thing going in this
Yes.
really great direction and everything else is falling apart.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and I think it's
I
just the understanding of you and who you are and where you're at
yes,
and that I don't know, it might even be our emotional intelligence
absolutely.
to knowing what we're bringing to the table as leaders every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that understanding of ourselves and understanding just it's just hard. It's hard being a person. It's hard running a business. It's a lot of pressure
Mhm.
and giving ourselves that grace and then also being able to extend that grace to our team who's they've got their own things, but that combination, like you said, that combination of the pressure and then losing yourself in the midst of it, that we really have to continue to focus on ourselves as people to grow into the roles that we've been given.
Yeah. So I've got a this kind of just came to mind as we were talking, going back to maybe our shadow selves and what
Oh,
we see in these tests. Can we change? Does a test like this tell us like, Jill, this is who you are and it doesn't matter how hard you work on it, this is just you? And I don't know that there's a good or a bad to that, may to have that, but let's say somebody runs up against something and they're like, I really don't like that trait about myself, or I really don't
right,
like that this is the way I react. Is there hope?
right. Oh, absolutely. I don't know. A zebra can't change its friend.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So I feel like with the Enneagram, what it's trying to tell you is that these are your tendencies. It's not putting you in a box and saying, enjoy. We've locked
Mhm.
the lid on there and we just hope there's enough air for you to survive. It's saying this is the box you put yourself in. Would you like to get out? And
Mhm.
so it's giving you an ability to see what you do when you're in stress, when you're interacting with things that trigger you, when you're doing really well as well. So it allows you to be able to choose different responses and effectively change. It's that idea that we will always be ourselves. We adapted ourselves when we were little people, and that has gotten right into our ego structure. That's
Mhm.
not at the core of me. I'm never going to not be me, but I can be a better version of myself.
Mhm.
And I can be more self aware and choose better responses that I'm more proud of moving forward.
Sure. And I would think the flip side is probably there too. Like I think sometimes I can look at this wheel and be like, I want to be the I
Totally.
don't know, the enthusiastic
Yes.
visionary.
King wants me at 7. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like, and instead I'm a 3, 6, 9, right?
Right.
And I'm a strong 3. And it doesn't matter one way or the other. But I think sometimes we can also get in that, oh, they must be better because they are
Right.
that comparison component. If you're out there, oh, I'm a strong whatever.
Yes.
Would you agree that also as you really get into this, you can maybe lean into where some of the traits that may not be as strong in your profile? Can you talk to
Absolutely.
that a little bit as well?
Absolutely. And speaking to that as well, the grass is always greener, right? We always look at, and it's always the sevens because they look like they're having so much fun. But the grass is always greener. Everybody's got issues underneath. Whatever veneer we have put up in front of us, that is just a very shallow look at the turmoil that each of us feels in the day to day life. And so, yes, absolutely. If we are able to look at ourselves and say, these are my tendencies, how can I grow? And the Enneagram allows that kind of movement as well. Not to get into super specifics, but there's arrows and wings and instincts, which are fascinating, that can help you really like dive into parts of yourself that maybe are underdeveloped. And I'm going to consciously develop this
Mhm.
part of myself. And if you understand the core motivation of yourself, of why you didn't develop that part of yourself early on, then you can now choose to say, I can let go of these things that are holding me back and I can run
Mm.
toward the thing that I want.
Mhm.
And if we're all looking at the seven and saying, I just want to have more fun, good. Now you can see why you were trying not to have as much fun. And now you can
Yes.
let yourself let go and be able to do that more.
Yeah.
So definitely there is hope. There's tons of growth and opportunity in the Enneagram. And if we just look at that shadow side, we can get really mired in the things that we are not or the things that we don't like and we are.
Mm.
And what's great about the Enneagram is it says, okay, so this is here, but you don't have to continue to choose this. You can choose something better. You have a whole array of things that you could choose.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about say somebody's this is really intriguing. I think this is like exactly what I have been looking for. How do they
Yeah.
how do you find out about this and where do you go? And like I started by reading a book and then went and
Yes.
took a personality test. What are the if somebody's serious about this, can you
Yes.
talk us through the steps and what that looks like?
Absolutely. And honestly, I think you did the best thing. I think probably the hardest part about it, the Enneagram journey, and you need to say it's a journey. It's not going to be, I'm
Yes.
taking this test and I've got it. It's a journey. So read that book. I love Ian Morgan Cron's The Road Back to You.
That was it.
Yes.
That was
Oh,
my book.
good. Yeah. I think he does such a great job. It's a fun read. He does the
Yes.
whole system so you can get a look at everything and you read every single type. I say that because I have seen it so many times where somebody takes one of these tests and they go, oh, that's my type. And they never read another description.
Mhm.
And it could be close, but it might not be it. And they cut themselves off from a lot of really great information from not reading the rest of it. So I recommend first reading a book, reading the whole thing, and sitting with a couple of types that really niggle at you a little bit. Maybe they make you a little uncomfortable and you really don't like
Yes.
it. And then
Yes.
see, is that what I'm doing? Is that why I'm doing it? So giving yourself time with it. If you're somebody who really benefits from talking things out, I know I'm somebody like that. Sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking till I'm saying it. Sitting down with an Enneagram coach, they're becoming much more common out there, but sitting down and being able to talk it through with somebody that they can reflect back to you what they're hearing you say. If you're going to take an Enneagram test, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Take your top three and read everything, but maybe that could help guide you a little bit. There is a great test out there. It's called the IEQ 9. You'll probably spend about 150
Yep.
bucks on it.
Yep.
Oh, is that the one you said?
Yep. It is.
Yeah.
I did the pro one.
It's so
Yep.
yeah, it's a great
Yep.
tool. And Dirk Clout is the manufacturer of the test. That's one of the schools that I got certified in. They know their stuff. But again, it's all based on motivation. So it's a little bit tricky to get it 100%
Mhm.
correct. But that's a really great tool too. If you just want to read a book, but you want to take a test, that's a great one.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So as we finish up here, and I know we've just unpacked a lot, and I feel like we could probably spend 2 or 3 hours on this,
Yes.
and that wouldn't even scratch the surface, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes. So for sure.
Yeah, of this. Can you, if you
Mhm.
had 2 or 3 thoughts that you would leave our listeners with in regard to, you've been great already, but just anything you think that we did not cover that you're like, "Man, I really would wanna make sure somebody understands this about Enneagram or thinks about this when they're maybe going down this road."
Sure. I guess I would say that the Enneagram's gonna require a little bit of time, and be gentle with yourself when you're going into this process. Just know that it's gonna take you time to figure out your type. And then when you find your type, it's gonna take a little bit of time to be okay with it. And
Mhm.
that's normal. And you're right in there with everybody else. And that's part of the journey. You taking the time to observe yourself, that's part of it. But just again, just that being gentle with yourself. Again, forgive yourself for not being perfect and not
Mhm.
being able to handle what life throws at you 100% of the time. So I guess that's what I would always say with the Enneagram is it feels like such a harsh tool at times because it talks a lot about that shadow side. And when you're reading there's descriptions, you want to throw a blanket over your head and be like, oh no.
Yep.
But if you're gentle with yourself, you can say, "Hey, I did this for a reason. I'm a good
Mhm.
person and I'm doing my best. And I was doing my best." That
Mhm.
I think that helps the pill go down a little bit easier.
Sure. Oh, such good advice. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Kimberly has been awesome." And I just want to take a minute, if we can. I know you have a book coming out. Maybe we might want to plug that.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're ready for that or not,
Yeah.
but how
Sure.
they can get a hold of you as a coach. Maybe I've got a doc out
Yeah.
that's listening and is, Jill, this is the exact episode I needed to listen to right now on Hey Docs because I'm beyond the book. I need a coach. I need somebody to unpack this with
Absolutely.
me. What's the best way people could get a hold of you and what services you might offer? And as well as maybe the sneak peek on the book there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to see that too. I'm just kidding. Yes. If you want to find out more about what I'm doing, I have a website, it's enneagramreflections.com. It's a bi-weekly ish blog on the Enneagram as well as a little MBTI. You can also email me at enneagramreflections.com at gmail.com. And my book is called Enneagram in the Workplace. And I wrote it just with the idea that we're busy people. And sometimes we know the type of the person who we're interacting with, and we just need to know what's going on. It's a reference book, essentially, of boiling down all those aspects of each of the types, their defense mechanisms, like their way they like to handle conflict, the
I
way that
cannot
they,
wait.
yeah. So it's a nice, like, a short reference guide for the workplace. So when you're in the middle of a conflict, you can first reference that, see what's maybe going on, and then go into those conversations with eyes wide open, hearts wide open, and be able to have really good conversations that really move things forward.
That's great. So we will be watching for that to come out.
Yes, yes, this
Not
year.
released yet, but it
Not
is.
released.
All right, it's coming out. That's wonderful.
TBD. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this and unpacking, I think, a hard, not hard subject, but a harder, if we were going to pick one of the tests to be talking about or type tests
Yes.
to be talking about, this is probably one of the harder ones, I think, out there.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So as
Yes.
we,
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
yeah, absolutely. So as we finish up, one of the things that I like to do a lot here on Hey Docs is do a little speed round. So are you ready for the speed round challenge?
I'm as ready as somebody who's terrible on her feet can be. Let's do it.
Let's do this. That's exactly where I'm at. I'm like, I don't even know. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. How about this? Describe your style in one word.
I would say compassionate, unless you're
Ooh,
talking about my fashion style. And then I would say boss mom meets stalker mom.
ooh, I like
Yeah.
that. We could go either way. I think
Yes.
that's great.
Yes.
What are you listening to or watching right now?
I am watching Only Murders in the Building. It's on Hulu with Selena
Ooh.
Gomez and Steve Martin and Martin Short. It's really cute. It's really fun.
Love it. Love it. I'm always looking for new binge worthy. So okay, all righty. Anything you do just for you.
I love to go for walks. I'm a big
Mm.
reader. I love to read, and I'm a singer, so I always love to throw some singing in the day as well. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. How about any hidden talent that you'd want to share with us?
I think just managing a full plate and singing again. Yeah. I and that's the one that I usually pull out of my back pocket that people are like, "What?" Yeah.
I love that. I always wanted to be a singer. Will never happen.
Yes.
But
Oh,
I am always impressed with anybody in the arts, whether it's music, whether it's just drawing or anything like that. We all have our talents, and that is
yes.
not mine. But I'm very appreciative of it. And then, if you had a big, hairy, audacious goal that you wanted to share, what might that be?
Yes. So I have always loved Disney and Disney musicals. So my big, hairy, audacious goal would be singing for Disney. That I would love to, like Disney princess style, like all of it. I would do that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, I love that. I hope you get that opportunity
yes. Thanks.
sometime.
Yeah.
Kimberly, it has been just an absolute joy having you on Hey Docs, and I am sure that I have docs that are going to be reaching out and that just got a ton out of you just unpacking this Enneagram here for us. So thanks again, and I hope to have you
Yes.
on the show again, and we'll talk some more.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
All right.